Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton. This video speaks about raising and educating Noahide children, and that includes setting the boundaries for life. So saying no to a child isn't necessarily setting boundaries. In fact, it's going to raise a lot of questions in the mind of the child. Children learn by example, especially by seeing. They watch what their adults and their peers are doing, and that is where they learn a lot of good things, most definitely, but also it's how they pick up on bad examples and behaviour as well. So we must be careful, particularly with our words, because our words as an adult don't necessarily convey the correct message to a child, because we have to realise that our comprehension and life experience is far greater than that of a small child. So we also must be careful about those examples that we do set. How many times have you sort of said something and then you've rolled your eyes and you made some expression? As a child sees that, and straight away they become confused, or they're wondering why you're saying one thing and yet your body is doing something else. Your expression is conveying a conflicting message. So these are things that we must be very careful about. When you say don't, or do not, or no, or you mustn't do that, and how many times have I told you this? The child needs to know a reason. Why are you saying I can't do that? Why are you telling me constantly no or don't? So you have to provide them with a legitimate reason, not just a fanciful reason. And you must put it in words that convey to that child on their level what the message is behind the word no, and behind that boundary that you're setting, and why you're setting that boundary. And this is a skill that you get quite good at as you get older as a parent. And I've had plenty of years experience. I didn't always have all the answers right, I can assure you. My children would attest to that. But some examples you can talk to a child about is you might say, no, I don't want you to go out there and play on the footpath because there's cars and there's strangers walk past, and you can't be unsupervised out there without an older person or myself. And you can explain the reason why you're setting that boundary and give them an example that they'll understand. For instance, explain to them why we have road rules, why we have rules about crossing a street. You know, you look to the right, you look to the left, you look to the right again before proceeding, all these things. And by giving them an example that a child can comprehend, they grasp the knowledge and the understanding of why you're saying no. Another example is when they want lollies or something they can't have. You can explain to them, well, that's for health reasons, or it's going to spoil your dinner, or it's not appropriate that you have that lolly. It's you know, the child could be diabetic, for instance, and obviously they can't have sugar. So for the reasons we set boundaries are really to give a, how shall I put it, long-term examples for children. And those reasons are that boundaries are there to modify social behaviour, their spiritual behaviour, the behaviour of being a righteous person, such as a righteous Noahide, and also righteous practices. And also, they've got to learn to read and write and do their sums, etc., because they require academic skills. Otherwise, they can't understand and comprehend things in life, like applying for a driver's license, like reading an instruction manual. All those things need to be explained. Those explanations help the child understand why he can or can't do a certain thing. And if you say no or don't, they're just going to say the proverbial word why. But why, Mum? Why can't I? Why, Dad? And so rather than wait for that, have an answer already prepared and explain to them why. I was homeschooled until I was 12 years old, and then I was sent to boarding school. And I can remember my parents, certainly I had boundaries, but those boundaries always came with a reason and a lesson why I had to do it. And I was very fortunate that most of the time the word no was followed with an explanation, which helped me to understand things much better. And I'll give you a perfect example. I can remember being out in the vehicle with my father when I was very young. He was checking on a boundary fence, and a little lamb was in on our side of the fence. And in that paddock we didn't have any lambs. It was a boundary fence between our property and the neighbours. And my father immediately picked the little lamb up, and of course I was delighted because he put it on my lap to nurse, and I said, "Oh, goody, goody, can I keep the lamb, Daddy?" You know, "Oh, goody." And of course he said, "No, we can't, Chrissy. That belongs to Mr. So-and-so, and we will take it back to the house and give it some water, and we'll phone him to come and pick up the lamb." "Oh, but Daddy, can't I have that little lamb, please?" "No." He explained to me that little lamb has a mother somewhere, bleating away and sad because her lamb is missing. And imagine how heartbreaking that is. What if someone picked you up, Chrissy, and took you home and kept you because you were lost? Your mother and I would be devastated. And that explanation made perfect sense. But then, of course, he enlarged upon that and said, "You must always return lost property. If you find something, it must be returned." Just as important as returning this little lamb, it's just as important to return to the rightful owner things like tools or books, etc. So I had a living lesson given to me that day that I completely comprehended and understood. Mind you, I was still a little bit disappointed I couldn't keep the lamb, but I understood why. It had to go back to its mother and the rightful owner of that sheep and lamb. So these will be little examples that you will have in your own arsenal of responses that you can give to your child. So always accompany no or don't do that with a reason why. And I'll tell you something else that is even more enlightening, is the fact that in the 7 Noahide laws have an explanation and an answer for just about everything you're going to come upon in life, and particularly applicable to when you're rearing your children or teaching your children values and ethics. And an example I'll give you here is the importance of ethics and principles, such as keeping your word. If you promise to help someone with something, unless it's something really, really drastic, you must keep your word. And you'll find that in the Divine Code. I think it's in the 3rd edition on page 222, and it's the laws and vows of promises. And it makes it very clear in there. So keeping our word is important, and that's important to teach children as soon as they can comprehend that. You make a promise, don't break it unless something really disastrous happens to prevent you from that. So the 7 Noahide laws will provide that basic foundation for all life learning and the answers to many things that will make it easy for you to convey the correct message to that child and young adult. And that those answers make perfect sense when you're rearing children. We're often stuck for an answer, but I really find the Divine Code, but specifically the 7 Noahide laws, really gives you a lot of tools to use with your children. When you're seeking other answers, it's always a good idea to consult with people, other rabbis or other parents, etc. If you particularly need some advice on a delicate matter, you're never alone. There's always someone that can give you some guidance. So don't feel you're the only Noahide parent out there raising a toddler or a primary school aged child or an adolescent. I would also like to just remind you all of each Thursday at 2 p.m. Israel time, the Academy of Shem has a prayer session called The Power of Prayer, and Devorah Sinton and myself co-host that. So please watch. It is live, but you can watch the recorded session afterwards. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, press the bell so you're alerted when the next video is available. And remember, saying no or don't do it is not setting guidelines or boundaries. Please take care and God bless.